What if the real reason your marketing isn't working has nothing to do with creativity, but rather that you're not creating those messages with a map? A map that not only shows you which direction you're going, but how all those messages are interconnected. That's what you need, a foundation of stories, a storytelling strategy. Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I am your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. This is episode 212, and today my guest is David Ebner. David is the founder of Content Workshop, is a creative writer, and honestly, one of the clearest minds I've met maybe when it comes to content strategy. That is what our conversation was about. Not storytelling structure, not how to optimize and go viral, et cetera, but how to actually build an entire system, a strategy in your business so that it's almost not work. You don't go create your product or your service and then go shout it out to the world. You build a foundation, a system of storytelling that does the work for you. It informs and influences all of the messages that you will create because you have that foundation so strong, so intact. David has been in this game for over a decade, and he talks about something that's not often talked about in marketing channels, which is real substance. It's not about metrics or hacks. It's about creating something real and authentic and tangible and understandable and repeatable by your community. When you do this, it builds trust within your community. They trust you. It's a relationship. It's reciprocal. So how do you build trust with story? Well, David talks about the difference in content and content marketing. And he talks about why so many small brands are caught up in these random acts of marketing and not relying on this foundational system, not relying on what he calls the message map in order to deliver their messages more effectively. But he doesn't skimp on his creative writing background either. We talk about narrative flow. We talk about character development. We talk about emotion in your marketing. And when you use emotion and when you tell stories and when you build trust, the return on your investment is longevity. Longevity with that relationship that you've worked so hard to build with your customer. David explains it so clearly, so simply, but it's profound when you understand it, and you will immediately be able to go apply it to your business as soon as you hear this. So here's my conversation with David Ebner, and I hope that you love it. David, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
Thanks for having me, Rain.
Well, I appreciate you being here. You have been at this storytelling game for quite a while, it seems.
Yeah, my hair was fully black when I started doing this, and now it's speckled gray quite a bit.
Well, it still looks good, pal. I've only been doing this for maybe 8 years, and I just lost all of mine. So, it hit some of us harder than others. I have been storytelling for a long time, but it was around 2018 where I realized, like, oh, this is actually something that can help people, not just filmmakers or writers necessarily. So I'm excited we were talking a little bit before we started recording about just how this translates to business, to branding, to the pursuit of anything we're trying to do, and how it's not just this fluffy, feel-good marketing tool. What I want to do first, though, people are very well educated these days, but a lot of my listeners are overwhelmed, under-resourced, maybe one-person teams, maybe three-person teams if they're lucky. So I also like to make sure that we lay the groundwork and the foundation. So to kick us off, let's just define content marketing for folks. That is a term that is used a lot. Yeah. And I suspect many people are like, okay, yeah, I'm creating content on social media. That's content marketing, right? And maybe it's a type, but could you just give me your definition just to kind of kick things off?
Yeah, sure. Everything is content. Content is everything, unfortunately as well as fortunately.
Fair point.
Yeah, a couple of my team members have this running joke where they, at a previous agency they were working at, they were walking around the room and like picking up things like, is this content? Is this content? Is this stapler content? Yes. That's the answer. Back in the day, it was very like succinct that content was blogs, was mostly written, was mostly, it had some design elements, but for the most part was written, but content has exploded, certainly, because of all the tactics and mediums available to deliver content. So I think it's important to differentiate what is content, which is the actual words, graphics, video, images, things like that. That's the content. The delivery mechanism, the tactics vary immensely. So yes, you're producing content on social media. Social media is the delivery mechanism. The tactic, let's say, the content is the video. The content is the copy.
So what are other tactics? And I'm sure there are many. So let's stick with the ones that what's your sweet spot? Like, where do you like to spend your time? What platforms do you like to leverage?
I'm old school, Rain. I still like Google. I still like searching for solutions and having high value content delivered to me that answers my questions. That's still my go-to, mostly because that's where most content is consumed. I mean, we talk about content on social, and certainly there's plenty of content in your feed. Are you actually consuming it? Not really. Like, is it leaving an imprint on your mind? If it rings true to you or has value, yes, it does. So I think I try to focus most of my time and energy on what's the highest value impact that I can have with the content. The delivery mechanism is what it is from there, but 9 times out of 10, it's when people are asking questions and seeking answers, and a lot of that still happens on search engines, believe it or not.
And would that content look like a blog, for example, or what else might people find content-wise when they're just searching for an answer to their question on Google?
Very commonly, it's important to know that Google search, the old school Google search, is still the #1 referring site in the world. Although it refers less traffic than it did before, it still refers tons. #2 is YouTube. Which is also Google owned, of course. So like video content is extremely heavily induced with value, seeking answers, looking for solutions. How do I change a tire, right? You're going to get way more value from YouTube on that probably than Google. Google's probably going to send you to YouTube for that. And the third is actually Google image search is the third largest search engine. So images, graphics, detailed graphics that are like infographics that outline schematics and show how things are done, process and flow hierarchy, still very, very informative from a value point of view. So those three are pretty much the core foundation.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm excited to kind of nerd out with you a little bit today, personally, and for my listeners. Because we have plenty of people on here to talk about how to develop characters and plot and, storytelling structures and things like that. But I really want to try to get to the nitty gritty in the right state or process. But the nitty gritty of marketing. So not just storytelling, but using storytelling as a strategy. So let's start here. For a small brand, doesn't have, necessarily a partnership with a big agency, maybe probably doesn't have a big budget, probably doesn't have a big team. What are the marketing strategies and tactics and maybe tools that go most overlooked by small brands that should be exploited or leveraged? So the big brands know these secrets.
Yeah.
But what are the most common ones that small brands just like they're too much in the weeds to even consider that they should be considering?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but many small brands are measured on like production, like how much can you produce as a marketer?
Totally.
And that's not the best way to start a marketing strategy. In fact, it's not a strategy. It's random acts of marketing, right? And I think that's where a lot of small brand marketers are finding themselves. So they're writing a social post, they're making an email, they're writing a blog, they're all one person doing all of these things, but might be missing the core foundation as to why those things work and who they should be for. I would say before you start with any tactics, and it doesn't matter how small the brand is, I would start with target audience, understanding your target audience, building out some personas, also doing a message map exercise. The second you can get those out the door, then you can start creating any type of element of content that ties back to those elements, and they're going to be more successful. They're going to hit truer. You're going to get maybe not as many people engaged with it, but you're going to get the right people engaged with it, which is what really matters, right? So that then can turn into many tactics, right? Many tactics. When we talk about storytelling and marketing, it's about cadence has a lot to do with it too. Yeah. A narrative thread is about this happened, then this happened, and this happened, and this happened because of those things. This happened, right? So it's all because of, not just errant things happening. So you can think about how that might work into a drip email campaign, right? If you've got an audience out there and you do a newsletter drip of value, you could drip different pieces of value over time that kind of build that narrative cadence for them. You can do that certainly in articles on your website too. You can tell longer stories on social media. I think the key is, if you truly want to deploy storytelling from a marketing tactic point of view, don't think short term in little sprints. I would think a little bit more broadly in kind of a campaign style, because I think that's where true storytelling can really work.
Real quick, can we dive a little further into the message map? I think that's the word the expression that you use, and explain to me what that is and what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the most underutilized resource for marketers and storytellers. You've got your personas, right? And most people know what those are, right? They're fictional, like, placeholders for your target audience. So you've got your persona, you know who you're targeting. What a message map essentially does is it kind of builds a mathematical equation out, right? You have audience A, they have pain point B. When you deploy solution C, which is your products and solutions as a brand, solution C, the outcome is X, right? And when we talk about what that outcome is, it's like, what are the benefits? How's their life better? What are all the positive outcomes for the people that you solve through that equation? And if you can start to understand that better, you really understand why people engage and buy your products and your solutions, you can start to build a better story that's around them and not around you. Where a lot of brand stories fall apart is that they're about the company or they're about the founder and not about the audience, which is like the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. So regardless of the size of the brand, any brand, 1 person to 1,000 people can do that effectively. And what we like to do is kind of build out that message map kind of framework. It's like a grid, right? A plus B plus C equals X. We do that for every solution that the brand offers the market, as well as every persona that they're trying to target. So eventually you get this large grid that kind of like maps out all of the benefits of their solutions to the target audience. And now that doesn't sound like messaging. That sounds just like kind of some basic solution mapping, but your messaging starts where that equation ends. That's where the messaging starts. Build messaging around those benefits, those outcomes, and how people's lives are better. Then you can really start to roll on the storytelling front.
That's good. Thank you. That's just that little nugget right there is so valuable for folks. So I'm glad we took the time to do that. Now let's go back to where we were about spending time doing the messaging map. And effectively what you were saying is like, because we were talking about everyone's so focused on production. Yeah. And so effectively it sounded like you were saying spend some time listening, right? Like getting to know your target audience, doing the message map, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all the best storytellers are really great listeners, aren't they?
Right.
So let's think about this in terms of the timeline. So I'll ask you the question, which is, it sounds like to me what you're saying is you need to spend a significant amount of time not necessarily producing yet and just ingesting, right? Just input, which is hard for folks because we measure everything by output, right? So this may be hard to actually put a timestamp on this, but I'll just tee it up and you can address it how you want to. Let's say we're giving ourselves a year roadmap for our MVP or minimum viable product before we launch. We'll just put it that way. And I've got my CEO who's like, all right, get on social media, start posting stuff. How much of that year, more or less, I'm not going to hold you to this, do you think we should spend in the beginning learning, listening, receiving input, creating the message map, et cetera?
Yeah, I can easily answer this question, actually. You can hold me accountable to it because we do this for our clients every day. So 8 to 12 weeks. 8 to 12 weeks is the right amount of time. At least that's how much it takes us. And we're pros. We do this all the time. So it might take you a little longer if you're by yourself and you don't have the resources. But it takes us 8 to 12 weeks to really understand the personas, build the message map, build kind of like, in that time, we actually usually build some sort of cornerstone content that answers those questions, those broader questions, long form pieces that live on the site, pieces that we want to send a ton of traffic to inevitably, pieces that like answer a lot of great questions. We'll do that in the first 8 to 12 weeks before we start producing anything else and other tactics.
Would that, sorry to jump in there, but would that be like white papers or something? What would the long piece of content look like?
Yeah, usually what we do is build it as a page on the site, and we're
Okay.
talking like 2,000 to 3,000 words. And I know
Yeah.
that's a lot. It's a long page, right? We break it up, we make it concise. We allow there to be like navigation on the page and things like that. But like the layout is actually really important. In storytelling, you lose people the second they see a huge body of copy. And I
Okay.
know, I have a master in fine arts degree in creative writing. I had to read a lot of books, very dense books in grad school. So it's just all, blocks of copy, but you lose your audience pretty fast. So it's important. Layout is important and all of that, but we build these cornerstone pieces that are essentially kind of like the hubs in a hub and spoke model of content strategy, which is very successful. They're the hubs, right? Spokes are all like different pieces that support that or about similar topics that touch it. So it's the best place to start. And then you can start to branch out into social content and all of those really could tie back to one of those hubs, right? If you really think about it. So yeah, it's tested though. Like this really works. It works really well.
It's good to hear that because I've been a part of teams. I've worked with teams or, served them. And I hear these stories all the time, whether it's, people I know, my wife, et cetera, of just exactly what you laid out. Is like we're measuring things based on production. And so you think the answer, not you, but one thinks the answer is to just jump in there and start producing, throwing stuff against the wall. Yeah. Hopefully something sticks, and then we'll just keep doing that, whichever one stuck, without really understanding why it stuck and if it's stuck in the right place. And so I like to hear that because it is hard, I think, for some folks who are action oriented and progress oriented and production oriented to be like, okay, let's just take 3 months and just listen, just chill. They I don't know, they view it as maybe passive, but it's like that is the process. And so I'm glad we outlined it so clearly.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, I think that storytelling often, maybe this is changing. Hopefully folks like you and I are helping change this, but I think it often gets misconstrued. We've already touched on this as like a marketing thing, but what I'm seeing now too, when you started doing this work, very few people were in the storytelling space, more or less, right? Now there's lots of us. Even since I started in 2017, 2018. So it's no longer a secret that like you should be telling stories in your market, right? Everybody knows that. In fact, it's all over the place and misused at times, but that's fine. But everybody knows that concept. But what I'm much more interested in is storytelling as a strategy and not just the tactic, i.e., like, I'm not so worried about like how to tell stories well for brands specifically. Okay. If we're trying to write a short story, then sure. But talk to me about the difference in storytelling as an overall strategy, a system for your business versus just the tool or the tactic of like, here's how you tell a story effectively.
Yeah. And really it comes down to that the strategic element of storytelling is all about emotion. So as a brand, you have to be bought into the concept that emotion matters. How people feel about you matters as a brand, not just how many people buy from you and how much they spend. That's the cornerstone of storytelling truly, is like building an emotional connection with an audience. That's what makes storytelling a form of art and not just, a tactic, right? So, if you can buy into that on a strategic level, that will infiltrate everything. It'll infiltrate the values that you espouse as a brand. That's extremely important to your story, right? What you put on your website is like, these values are important to us. They better be, because the second they come into question and you don't, stand behind them, then you're in trouble, right? And if you can build that as a strategy, like how people feel about our brand is important to us and how we help people is really the core of what is important to us and not just how much money we're making, then things open up and things change completely. Because now you start measuring tactics differently, right? You start measuring trust as the primary tactic and our metric, and not clicks or views or impressions or time on page. All of those might be indicators of trust, and they certainly are, right? Like we can back into that. But I think we get a little bit too overwhelmed, certainly as Americans. I've been spending a lot of time in Europe lately, and just it's intoxicating, like how things move slower and people don't, like, their career isn't the most important thing to them.
Do you like it or dislike it?
I love it. I love it. I love both, actually. I like having both. And I'm proud to be an American. When I come home, I'm like, our economy's moving twice the pace of yours because of these people. Look at these people going frantically from one thing to the next, good and bad.
Yeah, you're right.
But, we get a little too tied up in metrics that don't matter, short-term metrics that are just on a page. Like we have to hit a certain number of leads, a certain number of views, a certain number of clicks. So in the end, really from a business point of view, we just care about how much revenue are we generating and how much revenue are we projecting. And trust and emotional connection is a great projection of revenue. It's hard to put a number on it, but you know that when people are in a buying cycle, they're going to buy from you if they trust you. So anyway, it's a little kind of like I went way high level on it from a strategy point of view, but I think it's got to start there. If your executives don't buy into this concept and don't buy in that they're not the story, that the story is the audience, and that it's more important that they present value and help people than that person actually buys something right now or in a short period of time, then, you can really go anywhere with storytelling.
Why should they care about trust and brand and what people think of them if, the numbers is what keeps the lights on and the doors open? And let's say, like, what is the actual return there? Let's say the business is successful and they're selling their widget and they're making money, they're making profit off of that. Why should they care?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, talk about like the difference between like how Americans approach business versus like much of the rest of the world. But like, why you should care is that it feels good. I know that that's a really hard metric to measure, and nobody wants to hear that. Certainly not when they have to report their earnings next quarter for their stockholders. But like at the end of the day, helping people feels better than just taking from them. And if you have a whole team that's bought into this concept of building trust and helping people, then they're going to perform at heights that you've never even seen before. I can attest to this here at Content Workshop where I work. We have this foundation we've built of these things are important. We also have a mantra around here that no one needs to get rich. And when the CEO and the owner is saying that's like makes people feel good across the board, but it's also true. Now, I realize this is more of a strata across like business, ethics and morality more than it is about like paying the bills at the end of the day. But, the one begets the next. Like when people feel good that they're helping people, they're more likely to stay in a job regardless of what they're getting paid. When they feel like they are contributing to something larger than themselves, they're going to work the extra hours. The outcomes, we end up rewarding the outcomes instead of rewarding the behaviors all the time in marketing. If we focus a little bit more on the behaviors and say, hey, like maybe the outcome didn't go where we wanted it to go, but like the way you approached that, the way you were tenacious about working toward it, I can apply that in other ways now. So anyway, apologies again for going like super high, but this is heavy on my mind lately.
What I'm glad. I'm excited to dive into this with you. When you just said that, like focus on the behaviors and not the outcomes, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it applies. It made me think of my daughter's really good at soccer. She loves it right now. She's 7. She's young, right? But she loves it. And, and I still play. And so I try to help her. But this is the approach I take with her. It's like, okay, it's not really about making or missing or whatever. It's about what was your thought process? Like what was the behavior that you showed there? Because the lesson is in there, and that's where I want to focus with her. Not just did you score? Because if you accidentally like just toe poked it in and scored, like, okay, you got the result. Right. But you can't replicate that. And it was, you know what I mean? So I'd much rather you take a good shot and miss than score with something that you completely didn't mean to do. So that's just where my mind went as a parent right now. But let's get back focused on the topic at hand. I got a question for you though. So I agree it feels good. You touched on something when you were going through that about not necessarily loyalty, but essentially when you're talking about internally, like your employees, your team wanting to stay around with that company. And I think there may be something, let me know what you think. Do you think that this idea of emotion and trust and branding and being a, respectable, dependable company for those that you serve, do you think it's directly tied to longevity perhaps? Like, so yes, you might not make the dollar today, or you may be making the dollar today, but in terms of these legacy brands that stick around, it's relationships, right? Now you were talking about internally with the employees and team and such, but do you think that applies externally too? It's like if you consistently show up for decades as a solid brand, there's perhaps more of a chance of sustainability as a company versus just making the maximum dollar for this year or this quarter. You're
Yeah.
smiling.
Yeah. Like there's no way that there's not a correlation between those two things. You know, Simon Sinek, I forget which book it was. There's a recent book that he wrote about how like the average company's longevity on the S&P 500 used to be like 70 years. Like they would be on the S&P 500 for 70 years. Now it's like 13. So companies are failing and merging and getting acquired or whatever it may be at like an alarming rate. And I think a lot of it has to do with like our overall goals and what we expect from companies is that they're performing at specific metrics that are short term. And don't really have a lot of a long view play. Look at like just stock prices. Like all you have to do is look at the stock market to realize that that's true, right? The more we look at longevity and more we look at like we're not so worried about our success this year. Of course, we want to be successful, but like we want to set ourselves up for success 5 years from now. Very few brands are doing that. Very few brands are marketing that way. That means, hey, like I should have a glossary of terms on my website. And we have a glossary of terms on our website because I want to educate the person who is not in a buying cycle, who is just learning what content marketing is and brand storytelling is. And then 10 years from now, when they're in a decision-making place, maybe they'll buy from us. Maybe they won't, but probably they will if they have the budget, right? And I'm going to still be here in 10 years. I've been here for 13, right? It's going to happen. This is what I'm going to do until they put me in the ground, right? So there's certainly a correlation between focusing on this trust, focusing on our presence in the market, focusing on our ability to perform for people and helping people and be a value first brand is definitely measured to longevity. And like we said, the same thing is true with your staff and your internal team members too. And how they perform has everything to do with how your success as a brand. So if you're a CEO and listening to this and not just the marketer, I would think hard about how you can help entice them for those behaviors and not just outcomes. I would think there's a study called the broaden and build theory, but essentially it means that like positivity, when we have more positivity in our life, when we think about positive things, it essentially releases certain chemicals like in our mind, right? Which actually help us to kind of like broaden our thought horizon. We think about things more broadly and more things when we have more positivity in our lives. And also by doing that, it also helps us build essentially the things that we know and the knowledge that we have stacks up now. So if you can start to focus more on positivity in your workplace and providing that to your team members, as well as providing that to your target market through the marketing that you provide, you're only going to see long-term effects from that. It might take a while, but it's going to happen.
The broaden and build theory. I like that. You said not you said something, I believe it was on your website, but so correct me if I'm wrong. The expression was something to fuel your content engine.
Yeah,
I believe. And let's go back to the idea of this kind of long form piece, this flagship piece that you were talking about that you create. And you touched on this a little bit. You say it kind of influences the other pieces that kind of spawn from it. You didn't use those words. Talk to me about that idea of, I think some people struggle, especially small brands, with waking up and like, okay, what do I create today? What content do I create today? But if you do it right, it sounds like you have this engine that is running or that you can pull from or that will answer that question for you every day, so you don't necessarily have to sit there and be like, what do I create? I get caught in this just as a personal brand. Like, I need to post something today. I need to output. I need to execute. So then I'll just use myself. I'll be a martyr here. Then, so the slippery slope that I fall onto, whatever, from that is like, all right, it's less about what I'm putting out and just that I put out something. So what are you going to do? You're going to put out the cheapest piece of crap that you can. That's right. So as a business, what is the process to building an engine? Or how do you fuel that content engine?
Yeah, this is actually where that message mapping function comes into play quite a bit. It's really a foundational piece of all marketing. But if we understand what those common pain points are for that audience, we understand what they're looking for and what they need help with, that's your key right there, right? Like, how do we make these people's lives better? What's the Venn diagram, which is like their pain point, what's important to them right now, and the solution that we can provide? Like, what's in the middle of that? That's your content all day long, right? And there's probably a lot of stuff in there, right? Something that you have an expertise on that you can demonstrate for them, but also saves them time, energy, and provides them knowledge. So, if you build that message map correctly, you can start to see what those common pieces are there. And as you start to build your pillars around those common pieces, you can branch off in 1,000 different ways.
Mhm.
We've been writing content for some brands for years, and we're talking like 12, 15, 20 pieces a month. We're not running out of, of things that we could write about. On top of that, start to layer in like recent events, right? What's going on in the world, and you'll never run out.
Yeah.
And we're actually, I know this is not the topic of conversation, but like we're starting to build our own software at Content Workshop, because with the onset of AI, we now have the ability to do things at scale that we couldn't before. And I'm not talking about storytelling or creativity. I'm talking about the collection of information and the processing of that information.
I saw where you were going.
Yeah. And we're building this tool, we're calling it Chatter, but essentially it's like a content aggregation tool where you can feed it your personas, your target solutions, your the keyword phrases you're trying to reach, and it will essentially, scour an index of articles that have been written in the last 24 hours and show you the things that are relevant to your audience. So then you can start to say, okay, well, what should I write today? Well, what's relevant to my audience today that I'm also a subject matter expert on? Well, here's 15 things, right? So that I think could be helpful to provide more. You could do this today without our tool. You should buy our tool when it comes out. But like, you can do that today.
It's like Google Alerts on steroids.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Yeah.
But dude, no, I mean, now that is okay. Cause as an artist, right, we are in this really troubling time and this tug of war between like generative AI and replacing. I saw something the other day. I was like, we were supposed to create the machines to do the manual labor so that we can go off and create art, not the robots to create art. So we have to go do manual labor.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, exactly. So we're in this struggle. So I talked to lots of people on the show, especially because we're mostly targeting brand storytelling on, AI tools that are out there. I do believe they are a tool. I do not believe that they are the devil. Okay. But I really love that idea of using it for input, like we talked about, right? And scrubbing the internet to feed you. And then, you can use your human brain power to create this story, because often it's what we're seeing a lot of, David, and I'm sure this is not a secret to you, is we're all using the same tools, and if me and any other storytelling person, or if I'm a bricklayer, me and any other bricklayer are spouting out the same content about bricklaying because we're using AI tools to do it. So I think that is a really helpful way to do the type of work that you do, to use the tools that are inevitably, going to be more and more ubiquitous, and that we have at our disposal now in a positive way. Besides finding, I think that's such a great tip, finding what's relevant. And also you just do get more eyes when you're talking about a current event that people are already talking about. I mean, it's a great tactic to use. Still thinking through the lens of a smaller brand, what data should they be really hyper focused on? We didn't say the term vanity metrics, but you basically said like it's less about that. But I often think, again, I'll fall on the sword here, as a solopreneur, as a small business, you get consumed and caught up with production, and you don't often do the retrospective work to look back and really analyze your data at the level, like when I work with a bigger company, at the level they do.
Right.
So for that solopreneur small business, what are the data they should really be focused on in terms of growth in the manner that we're talking about? Like, I want to be respected. I want to be trusted. I want to help people and have a sustainable business and brand. What are the data tools that they should be leveraging, focusing on?
Yeah, I think the master metric, if I have to pick one, would be time on page. Now, they have other tools that'll show you dwell time in other instances, right? But like, if you really think about it, the amount of trust it takes for somebody first to get to your website, that's quite a bit. Second, to actually spend time consuming that specific piece of content is a pretty big indicator that that person is getting value from what you're producing, right? I think that's a huge metric to measure, because overall total time on page really means total trust built, right? Yeah. Now you can, I think I am not as up to date with all the metrics that are out there, but I think a lot of social media tools are now providing dwell time, like time actually seeing your post versus the number of impressions. Impressions mean nothing.
Yeah.
Clicks mean something, right? But impressions mean nothing. And just in total, like the ability then to drive somebody to your website from that piece and then actually consume something is pretty amazing in this day and age, right? No matter what tactic they come to your site from, there's a lot of different ways to drive them there. But the idea that they see that much value, I think, is pretty huge. So I would focus on that because I think that's an indicator of long-term success. I don't think clicks and form fills are short-term success, certainly. Even it's odd to say this in this time, but like even keyword ranking on search engines, because to be deemed an authority in these times in which there's so much content out there is actually extremely relevant.
Yeah.
Because people they're kind of navigating this sea of sameness. It's just like all this junk that's out there. Like to find something that is an authority on a topic is actually pretty enlightening. So focusing on the ability that more people can see your content in other institutions as well as other sites are linking to you because you're a reference on that topic, that's extremely important. So essentially overall topical authority is it can be measured by ranking and a few other things too, but then time on page would tell you about trust factor, I think. There's all sorts of you could do all sorts of scoring, you could ask people to take surveys, you could do all of that. That's expensive. Like most small brands don't have that money.
Yeah. And it doesn't always fully give you the information you need.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one. It's helpful, but it's not really the full answer from my experience. With your background in creative writing, how does that inform the work that you do daily now? And part two, what are the primary differences in the storytelling you were doing then versus the storytelling you're doing now?
Yeah, I might take those in reverse order if that's okay.
Yeah.
Creative storytelling, it's all creative. Let's call it artistic storytelling,
Sure.
because the only goal in artistic storytelling is to build emotion. There's no financial specific goal. Now, obviously, there can be downstream, but that's not usually the ability that you're looking to achieve. The artistic storytelling is all about emotion. For me, as somebody who studied that for many, many years in school, I focus very heavily on what emotion did I want to impart on the people who read what I write. What do I want them to feel? What emotion do I want them to feel now? And then what do I want them to like? Great art allows you to recall an emotion, right? Like in the future, when my story pops in their head, I want them to feel the same thing. And I think that's truly what makes it a work of art, right? Is that you can recall the emotion. It's imprinted on your mind. The tactics there, a lot of like obviously narration, character development, just scene development, world development, dialogue. All of those things are very artistic, but have a direct correlation to their commercial side, their commercial friend, which is content, right? And those skill sets translate completely in very different fashion. And this is actually the core concept of our entire company. And when we founded it 13 years ago, I was in graduate school learning these things. It's like, wait a second, like this stuff applies and I can sell this to people too. I can also make money with my art as well if I want to. But, narrative flow is perfectly correlated to all content. Every piece of content should have narrative flow to a degree. Character development is brand building 101, trust building. You're a voice in a void, right? That's all the same thing. Dialogue is everything. Dialogue is character development, right? On the art side, but on the commercial side, how you speak to your audience is everything about how they engage with you. The word choice, what you say when you have so few words available. When you read a piece of artistic storytelling, you're gonna see blocks of copy, sure, but like dialogue's usually pretty parsed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to do a lot with a little because it tells more about the person, about what they leave out. So as a brand, when you want to share information with people, how precise, concise, deliberate you can be with every word choice really matters, and helps build that long-term relationship and that trust, right? So anyway, I've used all of those skills on both sides, left and right. And today, to your first question, I use that mostly in conversation, conversations like this that we're having right now, Rain. I get to be on like many podcasts and share my thoughts. I'm I'm on sales calls for my company. I still run sales, which I really enjoy because we have a saying around here that helping is selling. Like if I can help this person, not only is that good for marketing with all the other things we talked about, but like I'm just trying to help this person on a call, and that might be like them buying something from me, but it might just not be. It might just be our friendship. And we have a saying here that our friendship is always free. So we end every sales call with that. Like if you want to just be friends and ask me questions from time to time, you can. So a lot of the storytelling tactics, even how I formulate our brand story, and how I try to like build a narrative thread and build emotion with people in conversation is really how I apply it today. I don't write anymore for the company. We have way better writers than me here. The team is so much more skilled than I am.
That's a sign of a good leader as far as I'm concerned. The things, when I think of a story and what a story does, like the power of storytelling, the words that come up are words we've already said here today. We didn't say empathy, but that is a quick one. We have said trust a lot. We're building a connection, right? Through emotion. That's another word that we've said a lot. And even like you were just saying with the friendship is free and sales, would you say sales is helping more or less, selling is helping? Those are still storytelling principles as far as as far as I consider, and you're nodding your head in agreement. So my question is, does one have to be a good storyteller per se to leverage storytelling as a strategy for their business?
Yes, but everybody could be a good storyteller is what I would say.
Say more.
Yeah. So like we all are storytellers. Come on. Like the reason I got into storytelling to begin with is I was a wee little lad, right? And I was in the kitchen almost every day. My mom's cooking dinner, right? She's really busy there's 5 of us. So like she's just constantly like moving from one thing to the next. So I would tell her about my day while she was cooking, and she would like be like listening, but it's hard to tell if she's actually like listening. So I'd start to make things up about my day. I'd start to tell her fantastic things that were happening, complete fantasy, right? And I would just wait for the moment to when she would stop, like, shucking the corn or snapping the green beans and look down at me and like, what? And that's what my reward was that ability to kind of like convince her or take her out of her mode. So it was my way of like connecting with her. So we all do this. We all do this in some degree, how we tell stories at parties, when we meet new people, how engaged of a listener we are is actually a very present way to be a good storyteller. We talked about listening, but like even how you encourage and ask questions of people instead of just telling people why what they just said relates to you, right? Like why what you just said is important to me, but like ask questions and be inquisitive, builds those relationships and those bonds. So do the same thing. There's plenty of great resources online to how to be a better storyteller. There's tons of free stuff out there. And my friendship is always free. You can go to our website in the chat bot and I'll talk to you about it, right? But in the end, that helps apply across all abilities in sales and marketing and running a business. Being an effective storyteller, sharing an emotional connection, imparting with empathy and helping people, all storytelling tactics, all good for the other side too.
Well, let's talk a little bit. We started touching on this in the beginning of the conversation when we were defining content marketing, what that looks like. Is this content? I love that. Something I noticed on your site is the variety of ways that you help your clients, and I want to keep picking at this a little bit to help my audience understand what it is, what it isn't, other ways you can market, other ways you can use storytelling. And what I was really excited to see on your page is the amount of in-person, live, experiential work that you all do, not just social, not just print, not just video. So this is kind of a big, broad, vague question, but I want to get people thinking outside the box because I know that they think social media almost first and foremost for many people. So we've established some of those other things, other versions of content marketing, but let's talk about some in-person things that they can do, because what I want to try to help people understand is like what works for one company or one brand doesn't work for everyone else. So, therefore, let's find the types of marketing that does work for you, that is aligned with your brand narrative and in what you want to stand for and how you want to show up in the world. And sometimes that is thinking outside the box. And so, again, I know this isn't a very direct question, but I want to talk about just the in-person live experiences that you help your clients create in the hopes of like sparking some ideas in my audience's mind.
You know, every opportunity you have for your brand to engage with somebody is an opportunity to impart emotion and essentially build a brand, your brand story. That's every opportunity. Now, we get a lot of opportunities online, certainly on the internet, tons, in fact. But we also get the opportunities in person, which they can actually be more impactful because we're spending more time and attention when we're directly talking to somebody or see them physically. This can happen in a lot of different ways, but think about like, again, what emotion do you want to impart when people engage with your brand? How do you want them to feel? How do you want to help them? Those translate to in-person events as much as they translate to your website, right? Or social media. We're talking about like building some sort of like virtual reality experience or booth or something like that at your next trade show where people can engage and get helpful information. You want people to leave the experience not just thinking, oh, that was cool, but thinking, oh, that was helpful, right? Because when you have a positive emotional experience with something, it does build, like we said before, it imprints on your mind. Emotion tied to events is what builds memories, right? So you want to be remembered the second they walk away. And the best way to do that is to build both an emotion and an action together. And in-person events is the best opportunity to do that. Now, it's difficult to do and usually kind of expensive, but there's definitely less expensive ways to do it. But you can go as wild as you want. We've talked to brands who have built these giant like display boards. They've built 3D that use like LiDAR and radar to build kind of like typography and maps. And as you move through a space, the space moves with you, right? There's people who are pumping specific scents into an area, right? To build that emotional connection. Westin Hotels does this really well. Every Westin in the world has a specific smell. And every time I walk in there, I'm like, this smells good. So it builds that emotional connection. So again, there are no limits on what that could be. There are so many different things. Another thing to think about is like old school tactics, like direct mail, right? Like I was on another podcast, Rain. I won't say which one, or if I like them better than you. I'll leave that to the audience.
You definitely don't. Come on now.
But I'll give you this. They mailed me a box of brownies after being a guest on the podcast. And I was like, who sent me brownies? This is the weirdest thing. And then I started thinking like, oh, this is a fantastic opportunity for them to impart their brand story with me. I don't know why specifically they sent it to me, but like think about that on a marketing tactic point of view, right? Like being able to build those like, wow, that was impressive moments in person are a lot easier. And that can be through direct mail. There's so many different ways to do it, but events are a great way to do it too.
Yeah, it's funny. And I was looking down at my notes from earlier. You said great art makes you recall the emotion. It's the same thing here, right? It's just how can you be memorable through emotion,
right? And
so that can happen in person, and that can happen virtually. That can happen any way that you conjure up these emotions in folks. Before we go, as you're forecasting into the next few years, where is your focus for your brand? Are you looking to leverage something new, or are you? I find people are either like in a transition and about to do something new, or either like doubling down on their current efforts and sinking into the ground a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I don't have any type of loyalty to how things are done as long as they're ethical and moral, right? So when we talk about AI, I've studied my entire life to be a writer. And we have a little saying that we're classically trained storytellers and we have the student loan debt to prove it. Like I spent a lot of money to learn how to do this skill. And now a lot of people are devaluing it because they think AI can do it for them. Yeah. Now, there's definitely a difference with my abilities even today as a writer and the output from AI. But like if you spend enough time tweaking, editing, revising, right, like you can get some good content. It might not be as good, but it's good and it'll just get better. It's not going to get worse, right? So in the end, whatever we produce has to help people. That's the metric. Is the quality high? Can we be proud of it? Can it help people? The other side of this is like, what about all of those people that are now seem to be, relegated? Like they're just like, well, they're not important anymore, all these skills that they learned. So we're trying to develop through we talked about the software that we're building. We're kind of taking some of our process that we've been honing for 13 years about how to create great content. That chatter thing is the first step. Like, what should we write about? How do we ideate new content? But like, we're going to build different agents for different parts of the process too. But all of them are built in mind with the fact that human creativity trumps all, and like you decided what step of the process the human steps in and does whatever part that they want to do or must do for the quality to be there. I think it's important for people to not stop doing the things that they love to do. Let them do the things that they love to do, especially if the output is good. But outside of that too, our goal is to make sure that marketers keep their jobs. And I think right now a lot of marketers are worried about their jobs because there's been a lot of layoffs and there's going to be more. And a lot of them are due to AI efficiency. So there's a lot, if you talk about people wanting to produce to show their worth, that's happening right now at volume. So why can't we build a tool that gives them the ability to do that at a high quality that they can be proud of and they're still part of the loop? And they're seen as, a value asset and a value add to the team. So we're trying to work through those lines and actually give people a tool in which to do that. And we're proud of that. And we feel good about it at the end of the day. It's expensive and it probably won't be super profitable, but that's fine, whatever.
What's the timeline for that more roughly?
Yeah, so the chatter agent is our goal is to have a working beta by the end of the year, probably early December. So people can like sign up to be a part of the beta. I would love to have an MVP by then, but that's probably not likely. And then the every time I say that, my team, they're like, the fact that I'm talking about it on a podcast, they're gonna like lose their minds. I've also been showing like potential clients like renderings and stuff, and they're like, stop doing that. I'm like, I'm just excited. So that's probably by the end of the year. And then the second agent is going to be more of like helping people brief and build like subject matter expert input into topic ideas. And then the third agent is going to be like an actual composition tool. So we're building them in order that essentially the process that it's best to develop content. The other agent 2 and 3 will probably be next year, probably close to the end of next year. Again, my developers are probably, their ears are burning somewhere.
Yes, I'm going to email them.
Yeah, email them
as soon as we get on.
right now. We are doubling down though on the things that work though too. Like if something works well and it helps people, and we're going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing it, and we're going to build other things to broach other markets too. But this idea of giving up on what works or what brings value to go over to this shiny thing over there, I don't see a lot of long-term viability in those types of moves.
Gotcha. Well, I love the work that you're doing, man. And now that I've gotten to know you a little bit, I got to say, and I'm not just saying this, like seeing how you lead with your heart genuinely is incredibly inspiring for someone like me who's trying to do similar work. I love the way that you lead yourself and your team.
Thanks, Rain. I appreciate that.
Man.
It's a lot of work, and sometimes it doesn't feel like it pays off as much. But at the end of the day, like I feel good about myself, and I only got so many days left, right? So I'm gonna end them feeling good about myself, regardless of the financial outcomes. That's kind of my goal. Well,
I think that the concepts that are leading you and the ones that you clearly care about matter, and I think that you're going to achieve those. Like, do I feel good? Am I helping people? We talked about longevity. You're not compromising yourself ethically. It's admirable, but you're still doing great work at scale. It's absolutely admirable. I appreciate you being on the show and sharing your perspective. I mean, I got a ton of value just from like each answer, so I know my audience will too. But thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Rain.
Absolutely. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.